Really, the question at play is, what are humans doing when they creatively develop in the world? Because that's the ultimate dilemma, the creative dilemma of humanity. And creativity is part of survival. So when nature develops things and when it invents or creates things, it's developing a closed system within a closed system. So what's happening there is the components are always disintegrating back into the system eventually, inevitably, by some process. And so, for instance, bugs, the way things eat one another, is going right back into the system. So when human beings are developing things, through the synthesis that we do, we're creating an open system in nature's system. So nature will always see this because what it's doing is reclosing its system to go back into the natural processes of its creative development. And it's almost as if it doesn't have a choice, it must close the system because it seems like there's only a limited amount of, let's say, resource. And so no matter what you do with what you think you're doing, it's always going to be the similar amount when it goes back into the system, because it's just like you're pushing things like grains of sand. When you push it over here and it blows over there and there's another one that blows over there. So it's always just like part of this overarching materialistic manifestation of the earth. And what happens is it takes these different forms. And anyways, when humans go in and they are trying to survive and they develop things and tools and habitats, everything that they do breaks the system and it opens nature's creative process loop. So it becomes like a wound to nature. So we're worried about protecting ourselves and surviving and going, supporting the tribe and sort of going against the harshness of nature. Nature is doing just the opposite and trying to make sure that it can fulfill its process of recapture because it is its closed system. And it's almost like the whole thing of polarity. The polarity is the nature of the problem, because essentially you start with nothing, then you have something. So you have polarity. And so it's like a game of this consciousness of manifesting life and reality and materialism, societies, the earth, all the other things we can ponder about and think that we can measure. And so the fact remains that essentially there is nothing. And then something is like an illusion that there is not nothing. Now that's super confusing, and for whatever reason, we're in this plane of this creative process where we can stay to a hard structure of reality. I can sit and discuss metaphysics or these abstract notions of cosmology or whatever without too much physics consequence, because so physics is like one of nature's rule sets. So whenever you're going to do something, all of the laws of nature are going to say, no, here's what's up. So that's why not only do we develop things from like nature's product, and then we chisel it out and take what we want and do things like that, but we have nature's elements too that are spawned from its creation of its products. So another thing is, where we would say Satan, that's a human-made concept. Where we would say evil, that's a human-made concept. What we have are natural processes, and it's part of nature's machine. Now, to think of nature's machine, it's doing everything that it does to suit a purpose. Everything that it does, every granule is to suit a purpose. The spawning of this consciousness of reality of life. Whereas the things that humans do, we don't account for a lot of things. There's that open system again. They're void in nature's systems, as nature must develop again to recapture that. We're in a game between like non-existence and existence. That's why it's harsh. And so when people are thinking of all these, demonic elements, and they're thinking of satanic things and whatnot, that is nature. And it's a part of nature's machine. So you and I can logically have opinions. It's part of like how we're hard-coded in this tier of nature's consciousness machine. And so we can have all these logical things, these mathematical things, and then we go into the abstract math and we say, well, there's a lot more. And then we keep going and going and going. It just goes on and on. So it's almost like the one rule is that it just goes on and on, like the rabbit hole, just goes on and on, because it doesn't take you to a fixed conclusion. The rabbit holes and the infinity, it takes you to dilemmas. And the dilemmas sort of boomerang you back around so that you have a different set of problems and a different perception, and still you can't solve the issues at play. But you can master some things of human beings if you want to play that game. Some of us did not go that route. We just wanted to be, artistic developers to make life entertaining, etc., etc. And so what I'm trying to get at with the systemic side of things, the things that spawn this evil quality in human society, it's all around the world, survival of the fittest, the arms race, the drugs trades, all these things. It's a spawn of the natural mechanism. You could say that, like when you have these emotional directives in your body, those emotions, like when you're young, they're directing back to your natural intentions, to your natural sensory. If you prick your finger, your nature says, ow. So it's sort of an emotion that you're experiencing something. And so, like when you're happy, when you're younger, it's easier to be happier over simpler things. And when you're older, you want this creative stimulus because it's part of this process. So even that's why we can never logically solve the issues of the evil of the world because it is a spawn of nature's processes. And on the human level, the class systems that are at play with humans are the age, the wisdom, the sexuality, the battle of the sexes, and the youth, this sort of natural tendency towards, what we think that nature would want because it's already embedded in us. So that's why when they say things about like your spirit and whatever, your intentions, they're embedded in you already. It's because logically that's what nature did. But that's nature's logic, that's not human's logic. So nature's math is always going towards the closing of the system. We're always going towards the opening of the system. So we have a polarity at play because we're at the end of nature's creative mechanism. So now we're literally in direct conflict at all times with nature. Isn't it wonderful? So that's sort of like how perplexing and how complex the situations of the world seem to be. And so that's why we can't just look at groups of people or actions of people and simply attribute things to them. That's something a simpleton would do, a person who's not thinking about the grander scheme. And so it's easier for them to come to terms with the conditions by moving on and closing that argument. But in reality, the argument doesn't close because it's a natural corruption intention of nature. So nature divides to survive, and humans are trying to survive nature. So we have this loop that's always at play. So the thing that we're also outpacing is nature. It's like it's not just we have a competition among humans, but the natural competition that's embedded from nature's machinery is the main process that we're always trying to outpace. So even though we can do so many sophisticated things technologically, the higher we get, the higher nature gets with its comeback around, because it can see, because it's just a machine, its voids. It can see that something's not right here. So now develop something to fix that. Even when it spawns through groups and clusters of peoples. I mean, what a complex situation. But one thing that has to be observed, the force is nature's machinery. And so That's the thing that doesn't have a right or wrong logic, and I suppose that's why you could call it the force. It has a logic, but it's a closed system, and it's not in harmony with humans. So that's why humans are not in harmony with nature. Like, we can live more harmoniously and make less destructive things for nature, but that increases our problems. So it's a conundrum, it's a dilemma, and those are the true attributes of like our situation. Even though like we can see all these games being played among the high players and these things that people do to stay within civilization, there's this grander scheme that's also at play. So I just wanted to mention that human beings don't develop complete systems. We develop systems that have a little opening right here, and the way we think is always open, because we are, of course, simply a spawn of this creative process of nature. But it's almost like we're the one that got away. So nature's always chasing us to say, hey, get back in my closed system. And the reason that it needs a closed system is because it's nothing. I mean, it's so crazy to wrap your head around. Like, it's a thing that just wanted to be in one state. And then one little thing happened to create a divided state, and then another divide, and then another divide, and another divide. So then you have hard structures, and you have things that you can play with, and you have all the theoretical stuff, like the stuff I'm babbling about. So then you have all these games going on. So you have a game layer. You have all this, so it just goes on and on like that. So that's what the conundrum of reality is really dealing with, and why it's not so simple to just make things stop. And why there's this domino effect at play. The domino is nature's like game of chasing its own tail through its creative processes.